Joining me today is Sheriff Bob Songer from Klickitat County, Washington. Thank you for taking the time to be my guest today, Sheriff.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Now, Sheriff Songer, how has the virus affected your county?
Well, like most counties, right now the virus is creating an economic problem in our county. Our businesses need to get open, and in my opinion, if we don't get our businesses open, uh, the economic problem is going to be a lot worse than the virus.
Now, what is the current situation in regards to the lockdown in your county?
Well, our governor Inslee has put out several orders about gathering and non-essential businesses and so forth, but I feel are unconstitutional. And I've given a press release that I will not, myself or my deputies, will not enforce those laws. They're unconstitutional. They're really not even a law. Uh, so I made a very strong stand against that. And my feeling is, as sheriff, my job is not only to throw bad guys in jail, which I think our officers do quite well at, but the primary job as an elected sheriff is to protect the citizens' liberties and God given constitutional rights. And that's exactly what I intend on doing.
Now, have any businesses started to reopen there in your county, Sheriff?
There has been some steps. They're going through what they call a dial down. They're allowing some places to open, some of the non-essential business to open, as long as the curb service, only so many people can be in the business at a time. But what folks don't realize, a lot of these businesses operate on a very thin profit line. And if you start telling them you only have half your customers in there, or you can only have three-quarters of your customers, that could be the very thing that'll cause them to go broke because they operate on such a thin profit line.
Now, you stated that you believe that the lockdown orders are unconstitutional and your department is not going to be enforcing them. What is overall your take as a sheriff of your county there of the governor's response, Jay Inslee's response to this, as he readies to deploy the National Guard for their contact tracing programs there in your state, and implying that and stating that anyone who refuses the lockdown orders may be subject to civil and criminal penalties?
Yeah, I know that's what he said. But the bottom line is, I don't work for the governor. I'm an elected sheriff. I only work for the people that elected me to office. And my job is to protect their rights. And if the governor thinks he's going to start bullying people, I know his intentions may be good. Government's intentions are always good. Not always, but most of the time. And he's doing it for the health of the public and save their lives and so forth. At the same time, stomping all over their liberties and their constitutional rights. And people need to wake up to the fact that, yes, a virus is dangerous. There's no question about it. Use good common sense. But if his group or I think he's got like 1,300 people that are going to go door to door, contact people for testing and so forth. And the citizens, several have asked me, Sheriff, well, if they come to my door, do I have to let them in? And I said, absolutely not. That's your choice as an individual. If you want to cooperate with them, that's your choice. But if you don't want to cooperate with them, you tell them get the hell off your property and either bring the sheriff, which I'd be happy to go out there, or get it in its due process. They got to go through a court to get a warrant to enter the property or enter the house. So unless they go through the due process of a court, if they were trying to force the quarantine by forcing people to go, they're clearly in violation of the Constitution.
What do you see next for your county moving forward, the next steps that you guys will be taking there as the summer approaches now?
I think what you're going to see is that at some point, a lot of these businesses are going to open, whether it's in the right dial down mode or not. They have to make a living. They have to feed their families. They have to pay their employees. And they can't do it if this is drug out over another couple months or whatever. And I think you're going to just see people disobey that so-called order and open their doors. Now, I've told these folks, our citizens, that I will not arrest them. I will not cite them. Unfortunately, I don't have any control over their business license. The state does. So they would be at risk of losing their business license. But you know, when our governor came out with essential and non-essential businesses, that just bothered me. The word essential and non-essential is ridiculous. It makes others feel like they're less important, right? When they can tell businesses, restaurants, and so forth that they can't be open, and they tell gun dealers that they can't sell firearms, even though the federal government said they are essential. Our illustrious governor, I call him King Inslee, he has said that those are non-essential businesses, violating the Second Amendment, and people to be able to have a firearm to protect themselves and so forth. But at the same time, he has no problem with allowing marijuana shops to be open, allowing liquor stores to be open. Of course, that's big tax money on the state, isn't it? So, so I think there's some motivation there. But my personal belief is that there is no crisis, absolutely no crisis, that should walk over your liberties or your constitutional rights, period. And the problem is that people roll over thinking the government's really going to try to help them out. And there's good intentions, don't get me wrong. Take my hat off to the medical staff, the nurses, and all these people on the front line doing an outstanding job. And this is not aimed toward them. This is aimed toward our governor. Our governor is pushing his liberal agenda using the crisis to do it and taking away certain liberties. Now, you can open up your business, sir, but you have to follow these guidelines or we'll shut you down. That's ridiculous. That's a violation of that person's rights. And I thought Sheriff Mack, Richard Mack, outstanding man, outstanding constitutional patriot. I thought he said it well. If we could all agree upon one amendment, and that would be religious freedom. If we could all agree just on that. But our governor did not agree to that. He's backed off of that a little because he got taken into federal court and they kind of slapped his hand on that. So he's not opened it completely, but he's backed off now that they could have cars show up in the parking lot and hold a service, which before that wasn't allowed. It's just unreal. And when I see officers across the country arresting people, that lady out of Texas, a salon owner, what a patriot she is. Officers going in and arresting these people are ridiculous. They ought to read the Constitution and the oath they took and feel ashamed to follow some idiot governor's mandate. Because that governor he did not write the Constitution, nor did our current president or anybody else, although I think our current president is doing an outstanding job, by the way. But the point being is, we can't let government overrule us. We can't. They work for us. We don't work for them. And that's the bottom line.
That's absolutely right, Sheriff Songer. And you were awarded the Constitutional Sheriff of the Year last year. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you.
Very proud of that, by the way.
Yes, yes, you should be. Absolutely. Is there any final points you'd like to make, Sheriff?
Well, we have several people running for office for governor. Lauren Culp, he's a police chief. He's one of them that got the Constitutional Peace Officers Award, by the way. Lauren is a very good man, a constitutional man, believes in your rights and your liberties, and he'll defend those. That's the kind of governor we need in our office. And somebody that realizes that the governor, we don't work for the governor. The governor works for us. And and that's like my job as an elected sheriff. Like I said before, the governor's not my boss. Nobody's my boss except the citizens of Clickitat County that elected me to office. They're my boss. And there's where my responsibility lies.
Thank you so much for your time today, Sheriff Songer, the 2019 Constitutional Sheriff of the Year. Thank you, sir, for upholding your oath and for upholding the Constitution.
Thank you, and I wish more sheriffs and police officers would do the same.
Many people agree. I think many people agree. And this whole situation is causing an awakening to that, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, thank you so much, Sheriff, for your time today.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day. God bless.
Very happy to have Sheriff Cameron Noel of Beaver County, Utah, joining me today. Thank you, Sheriff, for taking the time to be my guest.
You bet. Love it.
Now, Sheriff, I have to ask, how is the virus affecting your county?
Well, Spiro, I live in a small county in southern Utah. It's smaller here. We have not had one case in the entire county since this epidemic has come out, or this pandemic has come out. We have had them in surrounding counties and up in the northern end of the states, and there's been it just different but my county, we've been lucky not to have any cases at all. Lots of tests. I've had some employees and family members and people like that have had tests, but none that have been confirmed as positive.
So, what is the current state of the lockdown in your county, Sheriff?
Well, I'll tell you where we're at. The commissioners have worked very closely. The state of Utah has come up with, I believe, similar to a lot of the other states, they've come up with a color scheme. To be right honest with you, my citizens have followed the recommendations that have been set forth by the medical personnel and by our state government, and they've looked at those, and we haven't had any problems whatsoever with that. So we did have our restaurants and some of our businesses, of course, they closed down, but we're still able to provide services as lots of places around the country have done that kind of thing. But we're now opened up in our community, and we are right on Interstate 15, and it goes to Las Vegas and California and up into northern. We're right at the junction of I-70. A lot of people go to Colorado, so our community and the communities around us are seeing a lot more traffic and a lot more people out and about, which is good.
That is good. That is good to hear, Sheriff. What has been your take on the lockdowns kind of across the country on a larger scale? I mean, is this even legal? What a lot of these governors have been doing, and what has been your take on enforcement policy, like in general, of the lockdowns?
Well, that's kind of one of the reasons why I live in Utah, Spiro. I like my freedoms. I'm a veteran of foreign wars. I've been in the law enforcement for 30 years now, and I've been elected 4 different times as the sheriff of my community. I've served in lots of capacities, and I think I've done that, and I've been successful in those elections because I know who I work for, and I work for the people, and I believe in the Constitution. I fought for the Constitution when I went to war for that. And so the people put a lot of trust in their elected officials, in their governors, legislators, and in their sheriffs. And they put a lot of trust. And I think we need to put trust in them also and not violate the Constitution and violate their rights. I have seen, and I'm very disappointed in many of the states that have gone overboard and it's specifically some of those elected officials that have gone overboard. And I'm unfortunate to say that I've seen even some law enforcement agencies and their leaders in those agencies that have not done the right thing. It's funny because you go to different parts of the land in our country, and you've seen officers and sheriffs and chiefs that have stood up for the Constitution. Boy, I'm proud of those folks, and I'm hope I could be part of their group. But the other ones that have not done that have given in and used their authority the way they shouldn't be using their authority and try to lock down their citizens, not the right thing to do. And I don't adhere to any of that whatsoever.
Now, Sheriff, what is your take on the protests that we've been seeing around the country protesting these lockdowns that the state has imposed?
Reality-wise, I'm probably in favor of that. I don't know any other way. There's been people that have been threatened with arrest. There's people that have business owners. We heard about the case in Texas. Very, very unfortunate that a judge did that to this business owner down in Texas and put her in jail. Thankfully, there's people that had more power and authority that were able to get her out of that circumstance, and he should be held accountable for doing that to this person. So I agree with some of the protests. I'd like to. I do hope that they are kept civil, but the people need to know that these are citizens of the United States that live under the Constitution, and because we have a pandemic, they are smart enough, and some of them are out there that know how. They don't want to get the virus like anyone else does. We have ways. We can listen to our medical doctors. We can wear masks. We can stay physically distanced. They call it social distancing. I call it physical distancing because sometimes you're not able to socially interact with the person, but we can still do those things and not infringe upon our freedoms and on our rights.
Sheriff Noel, I'm sure you've heard about the contact tracing programs that are many states across the country are rolling out right now, and some of these states will be deploying their National Guard to assist in these contact tracing programs. We've heard health officials from both the World Health Organization claim that they believe it's time to go to people's homes and remove people from their homes that they believe to be infected. We've heard a public health official in Ventura County, California, sort of echo this same sentiment that they believe it's time to, go and check on people, take them from their homes, quarantine them, isolate them. This was met with a lot of pushback, and he did walk back those claims. But, based on my research, it clearly shows that isolation and quarantine is a major part of these contact tracing programs. I was wondering on your view on this, and has anyone in your county contacted you concerned about this potential contact tracing program?
No, they have not, and I'm concerned. I think it's totally overboard, and I would really rely upon the sheriffs and the other elected officials in the counties to not allow that to happen. That's totally overboard. It's not necessary. Believe me, if I'm very confident if someone that has the virus and they're in a home, we've been told by medical personnel that they should be quarantined, and that's where they're at. But there's no reason for that, and it's actually it should be against the law. It is against the law, and it's against constitutional rights. So no, that would never happen in my county. Again, one of the reasons, Spiro, why I live in the great state of Utah. So,
Sheriff Noel, any final points you'd like to make?
well, I thought about this conversation that we were going to have today. I will tell you, Spiro, that I run a jail with 400 inmates in that, and I have about 100 personnel, between 70 and 100 personnel that come in and out of that jail. Medical folks, correctional officers, police officers, dispatchers, you name it, lots of different folks. And I put a requirement when this was going down. I put in a requirement that you must wear a face mask if you are coming into the jail. Now think about that requirement that I put on that, Spiro. A jail is not the same as those people that are incarcerated in there. They don't have any rights. They don't have rights. They have some rights, but they don't have the same types of rights that we have that when we're out in freedom. So those rights are not there. However, I'm required to still take care of them and protect them, give them food and somewhere to sleep and all those things. But I'm also required to keep them medically safe. So I made a requirement with my folks that you're coming in and out. I want you to make sure we don't want an pandemic come into the jail. And I was able to do that. Whole different ball game inside of there than what it is in the outside. We cannot require and force people to do these things. They're smart enough. They know they're nobody that wants that. They know what the effects of it's going to be. And I just look at those two different comparisons. And when you start requiring and forcing people to do those things, they react negatively. And I think that's why I've been successful in my job. I work with my citizens. I work for my citizens. That's who elects me. And they want me to do that because I have trust in them. They have trust in me. And we totally all believe in the Constitution. So to do that. So.
Sheriff Noel, one final question for you. What was your take? I'm sure it was probably similar to mine and many others around the country, but when we had seen states threatening to throw business owners and people in jail for violating the lockdown orders, but at the same time, many of these jails were releasing criminals from jail.
Totally ridiculous, Spiro. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to tell you our state did not. I didn't see any business owners, but as you know, the ACLU went after sheriffs in our state, all 29 of them. They filed a lawsuit because we were not letting criminals out of jail. On the same token, they wanted us, not specifically in my state, but others. They wanted us to go after these folks that weren't doing, but they wanted to release murderers and rapists and child molesters. I personally wrote a letter to our governor and asked him to not do that, to consider the circumstances of what they were doing by releasing them. I'm not sure where that got to, but I don't think it was as bad, but there was a plan on doing that. And I'm glad our state didn't do it. These other states, I feel so bad for them. I've got family and friends and relatives that live in some of these states, and I just feel terrible for them for doing the things that they are. And I feel bad for the business owners that they have to put up with it. That's why it's so important to go out and vote, Spiro. Got to vote for the right people, for the folks that are not going to take away those liberties from us. So important for us and for our kids and grandkids. So,
Sheriff Noel, I know I said that the last question was going to be my last one, but what do you see moving forward for Beaver County? And, we keep hearing about this second wave that's going to be coming, and it's going to be much worse. And, so people are already expecting there to be another wave of lockdowns to follow. But what do you see going forward for Beaver County as we enter the summer and the lockdowns are lifted? And what is your position as sheriff there in Beaver County?
Well, I of course, I follow that on a daily basis. I communicate with our commissioners who works with our health department and our state officials, and we listen to those reports that come out. We've got plans in place for protection. If it gets the same or worse, or if it goes back to that, I'm hoping that it's going to stay exactly like it was. I understand there's a possibility that there could be a second wave. We haven't had any, so I'm hoping our second wave is the same thing, 0 cases. Again, I'm going to put the trust in our leadership that we've got and our citizens, that if more cases develop around our country or around our state in those areas, that we would take the appropriate precautions to do it. But again, walking that fine line and not stepping on people's rights and liberties.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today, Sheriff Noel. Thank you for standing up for the Constitution and for your service to your community.
Thank you, Spiro. Thanks. Call anytime.
Joining me today is Sheriff Dar Leaf of Berry County, Michigan. Thank you for taking the time to be my guest today, Sheriff.
Good afternoon.
Sheriff Leaf, how has the virus affected your county?
Not too bad. We've had, I think, a total of 54 total cases. We've had right around close to 40 recoveries and 14 active cases. And we had one that was kind of COVID related. They won't come out and say it was a COVID death or not.
And what is the current status of the lockdown in your county?
Well, we're kind of loosely having them do a lockdown. There's a battle right now in Michigan on whether or not the governor even has the authority to do a lockdown.
And in your opinion as sheriff there in Michigan and Berry County, has the lockdown really been warranted? And that's a good question. Is this even legal? And what has your enforcement policy been?
Our enforcement policy is we just go out and educate. We're not doing any citations. We're not making any arrests. The reality is I don't want any new people in the jail, because if we get an outbreak in the jail, it could get very, very expensive for the taxpayer here in the county.
Now, have businesses been allowed to open back up, or have they been opening up there in your county, in Michigan?
They're trying to, and we are not trying to keep them closed either. I look at if they're doing the social distancing and doing all the sanitary stuff they should be doing, I always question why they shouldn't be open. I think the effects long term, with people losing their jobs, who knows, maybe suicides might even be going up because of this. I look at the long terms of that.
Absolutely. Now, do you think, as sheriff of your county, Berry County there in Michigan, of Michigan Governor Whitmore's response to the situation? She has definitely made the headlines with some very controversial statements that you might expect to hear from a dictator rather than a public official.
Well, that's what the lawsuit's about. We got our own Republican Congress right now is taking her to I forgot that it's some type of tribunal court, and one of the not Supreme Court justices, one of the Court of Appeals justices gets appointed by the Supreme Court justice. And they sit in and listen to the arguments. And I think they have a good argument because she's making these orders without going through Congress, which basically, when you think about it, a state representative represents the people.
Well, absolutely. And what have your thoughts been concerning the protesters at the state's capitol there, protesting these lockdowns, as we've seen many people, even the media, trying to pose these protesters as the equivalent of terrorists, and even saying that some of them are pro-COVID-19 just for protesting the lockdowns and exercising their rights, including their Second Amendment.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I call them patriots. See, I've been to rallies before downtown Lansing for the Second Amendment, and those are always peaceful rallies. And we have guys walking around there with these loaded ARs right on their chest, and they got vests, and they got extra magazines on. It looks like they're ready to attack Fallujah or something like that. And we never have any problems. They go to the police officers, shake their hands, and tell them, hey, we're on your side. Police officers, I've yet to see anybody get scared as the police officers. The protests they had some Nazi flags, but those Nazi flags are actually kind of pointing at the governor. They weren't encouraging Nazism. They were pointing at the governor, calling her a Nazi. And she was on, I think it's The View, and make an issue with that. Well, that wasn't completely truthful, Governor. They were pointing the finger at you, saying you were the Nazi.
And now, what do you see moving forward in your county there in Michigan, Berry County?
We're ready to go to work. The whole concept of this lockdown was to what they call flatten the curve. And the curve being the graph of how many people get it and how many people die from it. And we've done more than flatten it. It ended up not being as serious of a curve as we thought it was going to be. The people ended up getting educated on how to handle things sanitarily. They were starting to wear rubber gloves when they go to the gas station and the pumps. A lot of people got hand sanitizer. People are wearing the masks. We got some people that don't, but that's going to happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And is there any final points that you'd like to make? And what have been your major concerns, regarding this current situation?
Major concerns is the Constitution itself. Does the governor have that kind of authority to go out and tell people you're locked down in your homes? Because in a sense, that's a unlawful arrest. You'd have to have lawful authority to do that. You'd have to be a criminal or a criminal. You'd have to be breaking the law in order for that to be legal. And you have a right to move around. You have a right to do a business. You have a right to speak freely. You have a right to assemble at a church. You have a right to assemble at the state capitol. You have a right to assemble at our courthouse lawn to protest. And I'm a little concerned that this is kind of turning into a political mess where rather than trying to focus on the problem at hand, they're trying to make it into something political. Plus, one of the problems we have is that we in law enforcement are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because we don't know what the truth is. City of Detroit, some of their hospitals down there had employees contacting me, asking me to do an investigation because the doctors were fudging the death certificates. Well, those are public record. If they're fudging death certificates, that's a crime. And where's the investigation? I'm hoping somebody is investigating it, and I hope somebody will hold those people accountable for that.
When you say fudging the numbers on the death certificates, fudging them in which way? That to indicate that there was more deaths or less deaths attributed to this?
they're saying there's more deaths. In my understanding, the reason why they're doing that is because there's federal money available. So if you were in hospice on your deathbed because of cancer, then all of a sudden you got COVID and died a day later, they're putting you down as your death as being COVID rather than the cancer. And that's the mess that we're in right now. And I'm pretty sure it's countrywide. And that's the stuff that we have to look into, because we're all being held at a house arrest situation here because of those stacked up numbers. Then we got other issues too. We got money coming in. I'm always wondering where these cities and counties and states are getting their money when they start giving their employees like a bonus or hazard pay, I guess I'll call it, for coming to work every day. And I understand their justification for it. You got people at home who are getting paid and not doing what they normally would do. And plus, the people taking the hazard pay are also taking on their jobs because we don't want them inside the buildings. So just the Department of Corrections alone, in a 2-week period, it's $10 million going out to their employees. I don't know what it is for the whole state, like the state police, the DHS, or anybody else. I don't know what it is. But where are we getting the money for that? It sounds to me like we were trillions of dollars in debt, and now all of a sudden we got this money, and now they're going to get reimbursed and all that other stuff. It's really out of control when it comes to the financial end of it. Our state right now is looking at probably about a $3 billion deficit, maybe more, depending on how long she wants to keep this lockdown. And we're giving out bonuses. That just doesn't make sense to me. The way our schools work is each student gets so much money awarded to them going to that school, like about $7,500 in some areas. You go to Detroit, it's upwards around $10,000. And what they're talking about now is that this hurt us financially so bad that they're looking at taking $300 to maybe $1,000 away from the students per student. And that's a big blow. And now I look back at going, well, if we're giving all these bonuses or this hazard pay, why did we not look ahead and start thinking about our schools and thinking about next year? Because our budget year for the state starts in October, so that's coming up fast.
Yes, it is. Now, we've seen many different states start to implement their contact tracing programs. And many of these states have been calling on the National Guard, they say not as an enforcement role, but as a support role to conduct the contact tracing efforts. Do you know of any contact tracing programs taking place in your state, and what is your position on this?
Get a search warrant. Now, you allow them to do that, they'll do it again and again, and each time they're going to take more and more of a step, and that Fourth Amendment will be gone pretty soon. And they're trying to justify it, saying that, oh, geez, we need this because if you go in contact with somebody who has COVID, we need to go out and take you and lock you up too and keep you away from everybody for 2 weeks. So, no, we're doing fine without all that. And reality is I don't think this virus is ever going to go away. I think it's out in our community, and I think it's going to come around every time the flu comes around.
Sheriff, what can you tell us about a barber in your area?
It's actually in Shiawassee County, and I call him a patriot because he's standing up, and he's got a lot of businesses, and all of his businesses are kind of shut down now. He has a lot of rental property, and he just decided he's going to go to work. He got tired of waiting for the governor and waiting for all this lockdown to go away, and so he started his business back up. They wrote him a couple citations. Then I don't know if he summoned them into court, if they summoned him into court to give him a court order to shut him down. The judge says no, then he's not going to shut him down. So I don't know if it was a day or two afterwards, the governor went and pulled his license to do business without a hearing, without notification. They just pulled his license. So he's still doing his business without that license. So I've kind of dubbed him as the bootleg barber. And I thought it'd be a fun name. Hopefully it'd catch on across the country. And he's kind of I guess you'd call him the Rosa Parks of barbers right now. And he took a stand, and he's still standing. He's got a lawsuit against the governor right now. He's got some good footing on it. I believe he's doing it at the federal level, but I'm not 100% sure. And I teach my guys at the office that there's state constitution and federal constitution. We took an oath to both. And there's a U.S. code. It's USC 42/1983 that if we are violating somebody's rights, we can individually be charged or we can individually be sued. And the lawsuit is very expensive if we lose it. It's 3 times damages plus reasonable attorney fees. And that includes any experts, any of that stuff. So this barber there, he's standing strong, and we'll see what the court's got to say about it. You know, the churches are winning their lawsuits at the federal level.
Yeah, that is it seems to me, not as an expert of law or any means, but just from my position, it seems like that is an overreach, I would say, to be able to just remove, that business owner's license. But of course, we see many overreaches under the guise of this declared emergency. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. What did you call him? The bootleg barber?
Bootleg, yeah, because he's operating a business without a license. And when they did that back in Prohibition, they would call it bootlegging. So I call him the bootleg barber.
That's a good nickname.
I thought it had a good ring to it.
Yeah, I think so.
And what it does is draw attention to it too, so people understand that the governor is limited. He gets hate phone calls. I get some hate email once in a while, but I'm not trying to start a fight with the governor. I just want the people to understand that there are limitations with that governor as much as there is limitations in my job.
Great. Sheriff, do you have any final points you'd like to make?
No, just the fact that the Constitution is first, not executive orders. People have a Constitution or a Bill of Rights that they can sit back on. And we're not limited. The government is limited. And people need to understand that. That's why I take the stance I take. Yeah, one will be go in front of me.
Well, Sheriff Leaf of Berry County, Michigan, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for upholding the Constitution.
Yeah, well, people still have rights, and government is still limited. Thank you.